Hi everyone, good morning and welcome to this webinar from Branduin Business Support, where we are delivering the first in our series of Branduin Business Bites, and we're talking about what is business resilience. So in this presentation we're going to talk through the concept of resilience and then give you an opportunity to talk through examples of what resilience would mean for you. We are joined today by my Branduin colleagues, Tor Saint, who is a branding and marketing expert, and Hitesh Kanadia, who is a financial expert in the space of financial brokerage. We're supported by the Chamber today with Lisa Rides, who is on the other side of the panel. Lisa represents the Chamber today. So we'll be talking about resilience, and we're just waiting for a couple of people to join because it's just after 10 o'clock. We'll start at 10:05, and hopefully this will be an informative and helpful session for you. Right, we're going to start in just on 1 minute. I know that these video calls and discussions tend to have people turn up after another call where they've been booked back to back, so they need a couple of minutes between calls to get a cup of tea or to sort themselves out ahead of the next call, but we'll kick off in about 30 seconds. And I can see we've had a couple more people join us, so we'll get started very shortly. Right, okay, well, good morning and welcome to this brand new series of Branduin Business Bites, where we look at different topics to provide you with insight and ideas about how to build your business and how to grow and develop your business model, find new clients, do things more effectively and efficiently. This morning, I'm joined by Tor Saint from Branduin and from Hitesh Kanadia. Tor is a branding and marketing expert, and Hitesh focuses on finance as a financial broker and deals with aspects of how to fund your business. So we also have Lisa Rides from the Chamber, who's here today to support us. So thanks to Lisa and the Chamber for hosting this event, and would like to talk today about what is business resilience. So we'll go into that. But first of all, we have a message from our sponsor. So over to you, Lisa. Can't hear you, Lisa.
Sorry. I am Lisa Rides. I work for West London Chambers. I'm the office manager here, and some of the bits that we do at the Chamber is we're a grassroots up organisation who help small businesses grow and develop into big businesses, and help give you more contacts with some of the big companies that you can't necessarily get hold of when you're such a small company. Some of the events that we do is we do international trade events. We've got a big event coming up. When is it? It's next week. It's a green event with Sir Jonathan Porritt, with a, sorry, I'm trying to find the event, the actual name. Um, it's marketing trade sustainability case study from New Zealand on the 18th of October with some fantastic people coming to speak, and it should be a really good event. We've also got local business breakfast. We've got our Women in Business breakfast on the 10th of October. We've got our major business awards at the end of the year at the Clayton Hotel on the 23rd of November, which should be a lot of fun. It's a big gala dinner with our big awards just before Christmas. So that's fantastic. And then we've got our Festival of Business, which you should actually book your stands for right now, because it's a great opportunity to show what you do and show it to other people so they can come around, see your stand. And it's a fantastic event. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'm happy to respond to some as well.
Great, thanks, Lisa, and we look forward to working with the Chamber on these events into the future, and the Gala Business Awards is a fantastic event as well. So moving on to Branduin, who we are, we're a leading business support delivery team in London and southeast of England. We work with smaller businesses, so we tend to work with the micros and the small businesses and have done so over the last decade. We have quality assured experts, so myself, Tor, Hitesh, we've all been through a rigorous process of assessing what we do and how we work, and we have worked with local businesses, with local government on funded programs to drive job creation, which leads to growth and builds wealth in the community. And we can work across the journey from startup to actually what is it that I want to do, through to building my revenue. So that's all about growth, earnings, and control. And we also can talk about how to get your business sold successfully and exit from it at a price that might appeal to you. So that's us. We've worked with many businesses and business organizations over the year. We work closely with chambers and councils. We are running a program with Watford Chamber and Watford Council for business development up there, and we are also delivering a program in Wandsworth on Fit to Bid. And you can see that over the years we've worked with a number of different organizations, including University of West London, Heathrow, Forge. So that's us, that's at Branduin. And then we want to talk about, what is resilience? And this is about our ability to adapt to disruptions, unplanned changes that can threaten our assets, our brand, or our reputation. And resilience is more than just being self-reliant and saying, I can sort this out myself. Resilience is about looking into the future and saying, what could disrupt my organization? Where are the risks and where are the challenges that are out there that I need to be able to respond to and direct my energy to? So part of it is focusing on our goals and focusing on our outcomes for our business, but also looking at how can those outcomes be affected by changes in business model. Biggest change we had in recent time was the COVID virus, where people were working online, working from home, and having to pivot to that. But after that, people have looked at it and have come back to a hybrid way of working. But a lot of businesses thrived during that time because their model was able to move quickly online and they were able to respond to it. But now we're looking at how can we look at the future and be more resilient. And some of the areas that impact this, where we talk about how can we respond, what should we do to resume business or to recover business and restore. So it's talking about the 4 R's and the impact areas, and I've kind of split them into 2 parts: as sales, marketing, branding, and your products and your mix of products, but also areas around financials, operations, technology, supply chain, information, and reputation. They tend to be more operational, and both of these areas can be affected by impact on customers. Maybe somebody in your supply chain is no longer able to deliver a product. Maybe you have issues with the technology providers. An example of that is not being able to use international support. For example, some businesses were using developers in Russia. Since the war that started there, those contracts have been cancelled, and therefore they've had to look for other ways to support their technology. So all of this makes a huge difference to how you prepare and recover from those situations. And another part we're talking about with the product is like, is your product going to work in this new market? What do you need to do to pivot that product? We've got financing. Do we know what our cash flow looks like? Do we have the right reserves in place in order to support the business if something was to happen? Do we know what we need in terms of cash flow to support an outage in sales? So these are all sorts of challenges that we have. And what we're looking at are, how do we think about those challenges in the long term, learn from that experience? How can we innovate and adapt in this space? Who can we partner and collaborate with? And what can we do to get away from paper-based documentation to more digital processes? Issues that people had during the lockdown is that they were no longer able to access their office. And if you had a lot of paper in the office, there were records that you needed that you couldn't get access to, particularly if you're in a shared office where the building had been closed, so it was difficult to get access and carry on with your business. So all of that was learning that we've had about moving to digital and what does digital mean and how can we survive in that space. So what we wanted to do with this was to use this more as a question and answer session, and we've got a few people online. If you'd like to pose us a question, we've got Tor and Hitesh will turn their cameras on, who can talk to some of these topics and look at ways of just sharing the situation you have and seeing if we can work with you on resilience and building your resilience to those topics. Anybody got any questions for the panel? I think you need to pop them into the chat box if you do. Okay. I've just popped a message in the chat if anybody has any questions for us. I'm going to talk a little bit about operational resilience. I think that's an area that I focus on, and part of the operational resilience is looking at, can I run my operation in circumstances where I'm not able to obtain the products I need to make my end product. So my supply chain's been disrupted. What do I need to do to ensure that I can continue to get the products that I need to do that? And if, for example, I'm sourcing my products from overseas, I've been working with a client who was making oil from nuts in Africa, and they were looking to import that into the UK and then mix that with other products to make a further product and sell that on. Issues you have there it was coming from Africa. There were some issues around sort of reliability of the road network. The supplier had an environment that was not as clear as or clean as you would like it to be, so it affected the quality of the product. And you also had some political risk around transportation of the product, and sometimes people being asked to pay more money to successfully deliver the product to the airport so it could be delivered into the UK. And so we're looking at this and looking at, well, how do you make that business more resilient, and how can you make sure that you've got the right processes in place and the right thinking in place to say, how do we mitigate for that and how do we prevent that from happening? And with this particular client, part of it is to diversify their supplier base, and we looked at that and said, well, can you diversify who you have orders from to make your product? And so we looked into alternative markets, and there are other suppliers available, so they were able to broaden their contracts to a couple of other suppliers. They're also able to look at ways to make the product better in terms of the quality of the product from the supplier, and putting in place terms and conditions around how do we make sure that this product is of the right level of quality. And that was about sealing up the environment, making sure that there was no dust and dirt in there, that people wore protective suits to stop from being carried into the room that they didn't want. And so there were different ways of doing that, but it was a case of looking at this and saying, how do we make this business more resilient? And then one of the issues we did have was that there was a dust storm, and it basically clouded up the provider's workshop. So again, having that diversity of supply chain meant you didn't lose out on the contracts that they had in the UK because they couldn't get the product they needed. So that's one example I had. Hitesh, do you have any examples of financial or product resilience?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I've got some examples of financial resilience that I'd like to share with you. I mean, I come across lots of businesses currently in the market that we're in at the moment with rising costs. Energy prices have gone up through the roof. A lot of clients in business at the moment are finding it very difficult to become resilient with just general unexpected expenses that arose that they didn't have 2 or 3 years ago before COVID. And that comes in terms of, it could be staff shortages, it could be having to buy new vehicles because of now the ULEZ expansion, the cost of living, higher rents premises. So yeah, there are lots of issues that businesses now face, and of course, it's very important that they consider what the best options for them to become more resilient. And there are many factors for them to consider. Like you mentioned earlier, Tony, do you need to find new suppliers to cut your costs, or do you need to downsize the business a little bit and reduce costs that way? And the most important thing from a financial aspect is, managing your cash flow, your working capital, and of course, we help businesses to review their finance agreements and share their management information to make them more efficient and become more resilient. In short, in summary, that's about it from me. But there, it's quite detailed. There are a lot of things that we need to consider. It's not a quick fix, but yeah, it's quite involved, and we've got to go through a lot of stuff that we need to check generally on business accounts, management information, to see how we can assist the business to become more resilient. Any questions from them? Happy to take them.
So I did have a question on that, Hitesh. If you're looking through the financials, you're talking about management accounting, and you're also talking about cash flow, and you're talking about assets and liabilities. How many businesses do you deal with have reasonably, how would I say, practical management accounting? Because oftentimes businesses just get the P&L and the balance sheet from the accountants, but that's a kind of monthly or an annual snapshot of where they're at. Do you find that businesses have a better understanding of P&L and cash flow over the longer term? Because management accounting would give you sort of 2 to 3 years of history and see how you're performing.
Great question, Tony. Yeah. Well, we look at. I mean, obviously, for larger companies, they would normally have some sort of a CRM system with an accounts package that give you a reflection of where the business is, at a given point in time, which is current live information. It's not historical. Of course, we would check the accounts and to see how they've previously traded, but we're more important in what is the business doing currently. And one of the best ways we do it is obviously checking their cash flow in terms of their banking. The banking is very important because every business owner, the first thing they want to know is how much have they sold and how much have they got to pay for the goods, and where is their cash flow at the moment on a monthly bank statement point of view. Are they going to face a huge bill in 3 months' time with a big VAT bill? Can they cope with it? Have they got any funding in place, or do they need to consider options to improve their cash flow? But I think it's very important for every director and business owner that I deal with at the moment that are a smaller business is mainly in current information from current trading. If they take payments from sort of debit, merchant services, how much do they take from there? Have they got customers on 30 or 60-day credit terms? There's a lot of things that we need to consider, but generally speaking, I think the bank statements give a very good reflection of what's going on currently in the business. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does, Hitesh. And I think for me, it touches on the fact that smaller business owners are maybe only looking at the annual accounts as a kind of statement of what's happened in the last 12 months, and not looking into more of the details around what do I need to have and when do I need to have it and what does it look like. And that part of the financial resilience is that forward-looking projection of what am I going to need, as opposed to what have I spent and what did I need. And I think it's trying to understand the patterns in your business. Is there seasonality? Do you have peaks and troughs around festivals and Christmas and those sorts of areas, or have you got a summer trough where everybody goes on holiday and nobody buys your product because of it's a service that you deliver and nobody wants it in summer, in August, because they've all gone on holiday. So understanding all of that, I think, helps when it comes to financial resilience, because you can look at what do I need and when do I need it from a financing perspective. So yeah, it does. Thanks, Hitesh. Tor, what about you? What about your experience with the kind of product and marketing side of things? Because I know you're a design expert.
Yeah, not design
your
in
thoughts.
the traditional sense, more in the kind of design of products and services. But I suppose in changing times and to be resilient with our products and services, the first thing I would start with is doing a real audit of what's working and what isn't, and that might change over time. And if you're a physical product-based business, that's easy. You've probably got a nice bit of balance sheet showing you the detail of which of your products are performing the best for you. If you're a service-based business, it gets a little bit more complicated. And if you are, I would encourage you to not just look at your delivery time when you're looking at the money you get for something. So for instance, if I think about a Spanish tutor, they might think purely of that hour that they are delivering that Spanish tuition. But the reality is that there's a lot of perhaps preparation, admin, etc., which goes into that hour. Or if they're doing a 3-hour workshop, there might be 2 days preparation, which goes into that 3-hour workshop. So thinking about and costing your time of preparation and admin when you're a service-based business, I think is really important. So you've got a real idea of what the kind of proper cost is and what you should be charging for it. And usually when people do this, they get a little bit of a shock and their prices go up quite a bit. So I think definitely doing a real audit of your products, what's being bought, what isn't, how has that shifted and changed? And then with that, one of the things that's really at the heart of what I do is going back to your customer and understanding, is a problem that you solved for them before no longer a problem because it's solved in a different way, or times have changed and they don't need it anymore? Or are there problems that they have that you're not helping them to solve? And the key way you need to do this is just get to know your customers. Whether it's products or service-based, get feedback from your customers, get detailed, talk to them. Even if you're kind of B2B, have a meeting with somebody that you worked with 6 months ago and talk to them about what was brilliant about working with me, what could be better, what could be easier, what was it that I didn't do? So really communicating with your customers to work out what problems they have and how you might be able to help solve that problem. Because ultimately, that's how you produce products and processes and services that people want to buy. You talk to your customers, you understand their problem, and you help them solve it. And that then goes back to the marketing side of that. So you found a problem that you need to solve for your client and you developed a product with it. You can start testing it out with your clients. But again, it comes back to understanding your customer. So for the marketing of it, you need to look at, where are they hanging out now? And that could have changed dramatically. We've seen social media sweep in quite a dramatic way. So marketing now looks very different to marketing 15 years ago. And even in terms of the type of platforms that are available, where are my customers now? Because it might not be the same place that they were 5 years ago. And also, I would say with this, don't get too caught up in the social media trap. We might get really excited about having an amazing online Instagram profile, but if your customer isn't hanging out on Instagram searching for that particular product, it's not going to help you reel them in. So I think with the marketing and with the product design side of things, everything comes back to reviewing what you've got and how it's working, and talking to your customers to better understand how you can help fulfill some of their needs.
It's interesting. Just while you're talking about that, Tor, I'm thinking about a client I worked with who made some very high-end pieces of furniture, and they had a similar problem. They took on a new sales and marketing person. All the marketing person wanted to do was to put pictures of their product on Instagram. But then when you delved into it, you found that none of their customers were actually on Instagram. And so that becomes like we've invested all of this time and effort in building up an Instagram presence, but we've consumed a lot of resource doing that. And we're probably not as resilient as we want to be because nobody's looking at our Instagram profile and we're not getting any conversion out of it. So we are losing money, if you like, because that investment has gone out the window, so to speak.
I think that's really true. An example of it, and I don't think it is the same now, but a few years ago, I was mentoring a charity and we were looking at the stats and people were very excited about Instagram as a way to reach people. But when they actually looked back at the statistics in terms of where they were getting the most donations from, it was the good old-fashioned email newsletter and the paper letter. And that was so vastly taking care of it. And if they hadn't been paying attention to that, there were people almost thinking, well, I personally don't open email newsletters or like posts, I'm on Instagram. But that's where we fall into the trap of thinking that we are our customer and we know how they're acting. We make an assumption that because I'm on Instagram and I'm there playing around and looking at things, that my potential customer might be. So we need to be prepared for the reality that actually they'll much rather get something in the post.
True, and I think that's a good point, Tor, because a lot of us made that error when we're starting out in business of focusing on, this is a really cool thing and I really like this, and we do what we like, not what the customer needs. And I'm actually sitting here with someone else who's started up a business, and the marketing they presented is all about them and what they do, and we need to be aware of the fact that perhaps it's more about the problems I'm solving for the business and what are they, and doing that sort of work. So part of the conversation with that person will be, it's all very interesting, I really like what you've done, but how's that going to solve the problem that the customer has? And we tend to overrun that and forget that, and then it's like, oh, why is nobody buying from me, or why have they stopped buying? And without that data, we become more fragile and less resilient.
I think it's very true. My favorite example of that is an electric toothbrush company. They were initially looking at kind of developing their problem and making it more exciting. And they had a big meeting and a brainstorm. And they're like, we're going to make it play music. That's amazing. And they got very excited about doing this until somebody sensibly stepped in and brought in some design thinking. And they actually went out to the customers, and the customers were like, I don't want my toothbrush to play me music. I would like the battery life to be longer. That's what I would like in a product.
Yeah.
And it's those sort of things. If you can intervene at that point, then you stop spending a fortune developing a musical toothbrush, and you develop a long life battery toothbrush, which your customers want to buy.
Yeah. And the product is probably more resilient as well, that it doesn't go flat, and that the battery has a better lifespan. So yeah, I've not forgotten to charge my toothbrush up, and all of a sudden, yes, it's back to the manual process. No, that's a great example, Tor. And I think that, again, for our customers, it's about getting out of our heads and into their shoes and saying, what does the customer really want? And as you say, the only way you can do that is by asking the customer, saying, what worked well, what's not working, what could we do differently, what would you like to see, rather than, I've got this great idea. Might be a great idea. Most of the time, I think research shows that ideas, something like 90% of Bosch's ideas end up in the bin because they don't work with their innovations, and they only have a very small number of them come through to actual manufacturing. So yeah, getting into their shoes, and we'll talk about that in our session tour when we get into design thinking, because we've got you to talk about that in a couple of months' time. So thanks for that. Hitesh, we'll be talking about finance as well next time round. Is there anything specifically you think at the moment that people should be looking for to build up their financial resilience, given interest rates have gone up, some uncertainty in the financial markets about funding and availability? Is there anything you're seeing out there that people should be looking at?
Absolutely. I mean, many of the businesses that I work with currently, they all have some issue or another with the way the business is operated and how the transactions are processed. Look, basically costs have gone up for a lot of businesses. Yeah, the costs have gone up and the profit margins have been eroded. So in terms for them to continue and trade, they look at all sort of alternatives. And as a finance expert, I don't go and say to them, oh, let's, have you considered a loan? I mean, there are so many different aspects of funding available now, and of course, it's the business owner's decision to say, well, hang on a minute, look, I would prefer to do, maybe a short-term finance, maybe like a flexible loan instead of a long-term mortgage loan. But the main thing I'm seeing at the moment is a lot of people are actually reviewing their finances at the moment with interest rates at the moment. We're hoping that they've peaked, and we're hoping that, we see mortgage lenders now releasing emails when we get emails by their day, where rates are reducing marginally, bit by bit by bit. But so it's a good time to prepare and review your finances and see what's available in the marketplace over the next couple of months, because rates have lowered slightly. So if you're paying a much higher rate, or if you're coming off a fixed rate and going into a variable rate, you're going to pay a lot more on your monthly payment. So it is a great time to actually review whether you've got a mortgage on your business or your property or your cash flow finance, in terms of how do your invoices get paid? If you got, do you suffer from late payments from your customers? Instead of 30 days credit, are they paying 2-3 months later on, which could have a massive impact on your cash flow? Because there are a lot of things that we can consider. But the best way to do it is to review it and find a solution that that you've got control of, rather than leave it to go wrong at the last minute.
Yeah. Do you think many businesses are caught out, particularly in the trades, by the ULEZ changes and the extension to the edge of the M25? Because I know a lot of businesses in the home counties were suddenly having to pay the £12.50 a day charge for entering London. Have you seen an uptick in that, and could people have been better prepared for that, as an example?
You get a mixture of businesses where you've got some businesses who are proactive. They've responded well before the ULEZ actually started, and they've updated the vehicle fleets maybe a year ahead of now. And then you see many smaller businesses like tradespeople who rely on their van to, if they're a plumber or a roofer or something, they've got to they have a fleet of 5-6 vans now. If they go and replace those vans with new vans, they've left it to the last minute, and you know what they think? Well, hang on a minute, we can't afford to go and replace these vehicles, because the cost to replace them is, instead of paying £400 a month for a vehicle, is now probably £600-700 a vehicle. And if you've got 7 vehicles, suddenly you've got to find, you're short of 4 or 5 grand a month just on payments. Yeah.
And that really eats into your margins. Yeah.
It just erodes your margin, and before you know it, it's are you running at a profit, or are you breaking even, or even possibly running at a slight loss? But the ULEZ has had a massive impact, along with energy costs. It's not a good time out there at the moment in terms of pricing and all that. But look, rates are on the way down, so that's a positive.
In all of that, and we can talk about energy costs as well next time, when you do your presentation in November, Hitesh, where we look at some of the financial impacts of that and cover off on that. Okay, great. Thanks, Hitesh. Tor, one last question for you. If I am a service-based organization, what should I be thinking about now in terms of my product and, the kind of market for that, particularly if I am, providing, say, event management, it's coming up into Christmas time, what should I be looking at to try and attract my customers in, do you think?
The customers themselves.
Yep.
I sometimes feel like a bit of an old broken record with these things, but it is going back to understanding where your customers are at and what their needs are. One thing that I would say, if you haven't been able to get much customer feedback before, now's your chance. If you're going in and you're creating events, or you're doing something in the next few months, particularly in the run up to Christmas, map out what is your process when you're working with clients as a service. What's their customer journey and their experience with you? So map that out so you can start to understand what they need from you at the various different stages. And then I would really encourage, make sure you're getting some feedback at the end to find out how you can adapt and change it. and detailed feedback, not was that good for you? And they go, yeah, it was great. That's not useful. Have a chat to them.
Yeah.
Some detailed feedback. What about it was good? What made it easier? What made it more difficult? What made it more enjoyable? What did you like about working with me? And also in this way, hopefully you can get a nice, good, juicy review for yourself as well. But really starting to look at, as a service provider, what's my customer journey? How can I make that so easy for my customer? So easy that there's no friction. It's just effortlessly easy so that they keep moving forward without any barriers. You put barriers up in people's ways that you make it difficult for them to do something, or perhaps you're not working in a way which is helping them. That's when your customer goes off the boil and goes to somebody else.
Okay, thanks, Tor. That's great. And speaking of that, I will just pop that in the chat because we've spent about 37 minutes. So I think that's a good point to stop and wrap this up and look at, what happens next. Some of the things we look at are risk assessments. I think, Tor, you talked about that when we looked at a product assessment and what's going on. Hitesh talked about that from the financial perspective. Part of it can be to develop a business continuity plan as well, and that's different activity from your resilience plan, but that's like, how do I keep my business running when things stop working? We can invest in digital transformation and cloud solutions. That's enabling us to move our business model along and ensure that we've got a better way of working that isn't reliant on pieces of paper moving around. We can look at diversifying customer base and new markets, and Tor, you talked about that, and how do you look at the design around that and make that happen, and Hitesh is talking at that from a financial perspective and saying, where do I go that's a new market that I can get my funding? And then finally, and I think we've all talked about this, is engage with your community and your stakeholders, say, what is going on? What do we need to do to make this better? So that's pretty much that from us. If you could put your feedback in the chat, that would be really appreciated. It'd be lovely if we could get some detailed feedback from you about how the session's gone. We're going to do these sessions over a period of about 12 months with the Chamber, and we're looking at ways of engaging and being more interactive with the stakeholders in our constituency, which is West London and as I said, the home counties. So feedback is appreciated. If anybody has any questions, I'm not sure if Lisa can let you chat, but you can at least pop your questions in the chat box. And as I said, if you want to contact us, then our details are here, and I'll also pop them in the chat as well. Any questions, anybody?
I'll ask a quick question, Tony. Do we have the date confirmed for Hitesh's finance one coming up next?
I am working with Sally and the Chamber to come up with a set of dates on that. It, I believe, will be the first Wednesday in November, which escapes my mind at this point in time as to what that date is. But it will be, we're looking to hold these on Wednesday mornings at this time, and it'll either be the 1st or the 8th of November, but we have to finalize that. But I will do that and send the details out through the Chamber as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I was just going to add to that to say, look, if anyone's got any questions, if they might have any questions right away at this moment, you've got our details. Email us or call us and get in touch. And if you've got anything that you need assistance or advice with, how can we help you? With any issues that you might be facing. You've got Tony, Tor, and myself. Lots of experience here, so yeah, or we'll be more than happy to assist. Perfect, brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. So what I'm going to do is I will finish up the presentation here. Lisa will stop the session, but thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session. Thanks, then.